All right, guys, I am at my MR1 gantry CNC machine. I've got a chunk of aluminum sitting in there ready to be machined. And what I am gonna be cutting is this guy. This is a 3D printed version of the tow hook that I am putting together for the Ultima. What's going on, YouTube family? My name is Dan Dulac and welcome back to my channel where I am building a V10 powered Ultima Evolution convertible. This is episode number 55. You know the drill by now. If you're new to my channel, there's 54 other episodes. If you are into customizing, modifying cars through cutting and grinding, welding, brazing, fabrication with lathe work, mill work, 3D printing, CAD design, CNC plasma cutting, custom wiring, custom electronics, laminating, you found the right place. This is the right channel for you, so welcome. On this episode, we are going to try to get the transmission to run. I'm going to lay out and review my latest updated plan. I have since changed my plan from a couple of videos ago. I'm moving in a different direction, feel much better about it, and we're hot on the trail. We're going to put my CNC machine to work. We're actually going to fabricate a removable tow hook or tow eye setup for the front of the car. Given that this is primarily going to be a street car, I wanted a tow hook that's easily removable. It cleans up the front end quite a bit, so I don't have to have a permanent tow hook there all the time. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. And we're going to put that thing right to use. I've got a trailer rented. We're going to hoist the car up onto the trailer with that new tow hook, bring it down the road, and plug in the Audi Lamborghini factory Otis software. That software will plug into the factory OEM computers, and we're gonna see what's prohibiting me from running the clutch adaptation on my DL800 transmission so that I can run. I'm telling you right now, and you'll see in this video, if that clutch adaptation was in fact set up, I'd be driving this car right now. I can get it into gear, I can set the gears on my Motec display. All that is set up and running and working operational. We just gotta get the clutches to adapt so it will actually drive and power itself. So, lots of exciting stuff. Let's get after it. All right, on the last episode, I showed how I installed all the headlights, the trim, the plastic cover, the Lexan cover to the headlights and so forth. But what I didn't show was some of the other things, and some of you guys, the sharp eyes, noticed this, is I also have the front lip on here. So this is a part I ordered after the kit. I've got it all installed here, as well as I've got some mocked up winglets here. So I 3D printed these winglets here, kind of to match the winglets that are on the rear as well. Same kind of general size, but I wanted the look. I like the look of the winglets. Certainly the ones that came on the side skirts from the factory, it's all carbon fiber. And I wanted to put a winglet in place to match. And what I'm gonna do is all carbon fiber skin that as well. I don't know if there's any aero benefit out of this. You can see there is a small channel, air channel that will go through there. So it might stream some air down alongside of the car and maybe help guide air into the intake. But again, no flow analysis on any of this. This is just more of an aesthetic thing for me than anything else. So pretty straightforward affair installing that front lip. I just affixed it to the underside, marked where the holes need to go, drilled the holes in the front clam, and then the rib nuts in place. And then I backed the rib nuts with some epoxy so the rib nuts won't twist or turn at any point down the road either. The other thing you'll notice too, I've got the mesh grills are installed. I have not installed the mesh grill on the main opening, the main intake yet, but I'll do that. There's the mesh grill on the other side, and you may be wondering, what are those little sensors? There's actually 3 here. One in the middle, and then one on each side. Those are actually laser jammer devices and parking sensors. So this company, Adaptive Technologies, makes a laser jammer / parking sensor setup. So that's what you see here. So in parking sensor mode, this beeps, the system beeps when you get, within a few feet of the front to warn you that you're approaching an obstruction. But then in laser jammer mode, those sensors act as laser jammers. Activate the system and jam for 5 seconds while you get a moment to hit the brake and slow down. Deactivates itself so that the gun can get a proper reading. So it's a pretty cool setup. Obviously haven't tested or tried it yet, but I'm hoping that might save my bacon when I'm out on the road horsing around. The other thing I did off camera is I installed these arrow catch latches. I did the same on the rear back again many episodes ago. I finally installed them on the front. That was pretty easy to do. It's lined up nice. You see the pin slides through the post that is right there on both sides, and makes for a really nice clean install. So let me open this up and I'll show you what that looks like. So here you can see the pins right here, obviously adjustable. I installed these after the fact, and I tell you what, that panel that I put underneath, I put a panel underneath the side pod that's removable. That gave me access to get my hand up inside the side pod and twist on the nut and a wrench to tighten it all down. So that actually worked out pretty well. I've got the headlight buckets, so I actually covered these with some rubberized bed liner that you would use on a pickup truck. Rocks and stuff that gets churned up here in the wheel well will get absorbed and won't make a lot of noise. This is rubberized cover. I'm thinking of actually doing the same thing on the underside wheel well here. Protect the underside of the fiberglass, prevent rock chips from actually dinging the surface, because I have seen cases where a big rock from up underneath will create an imperfection on the surface that you can see. So I want to avoid that. I'm also going to do this rock guard kind of on the inside of the wheel well here, covering this area up. You can see the laser jammer modules down in there. I just cut a little hole in the mesh grill there so that those just peek out. You can also see I've got my K40 radar sensor, so I've got the radar system in here. So both laser jammer, radar system in this. You can see my harnesses there. If I unplug all the harnesses at that point, then I can remove the front clam easily right there at that point. So all my harness plugs are nicely located in one spot. This is the factory tow hook that comes with the kit, and where this typically goes is right down here. And so what you do is you bolt it in. There's some standoffs to raise it up off the front lip here a little bit, but still requires that you cut out a fair bit of this setup, and it's permanent. So once you bolt this thing on, to take it off, you can unbolt it. Now I hope to rarely ever need this. Good idea if this is a full-time race car, of course, but it's not. This is more of a full-time street car. So I want a tow hook that can be removed or installed only when it's needed, so visually it's not obtrusive and keeps the front end looking nice and clean. So I have designed as a solution this tow hook clamp, or tow hook bracket, if you will. This is the 3D printed version. I'm actually going to cut this with my CNC machine. So we're going to put my MR1 gantry CNC to work and cut this out at a T6061 aluminum. Be nice and stout. It's basically a 1-inch square post here on top of a 1/2-inch thick base. So this should be plenty strong, countersunk, screw holes in there to give it a nice clean look. I'll powder coat the aluminum version black as well, so it just blends in and you won't even be able to see it. I picked up one of these. This is just a tow hook. I think this is actually from a Subaru model. It's got a 16mm by 1.5 and it threads perfectly into the hole. And then what I'll do is, only when I need the hook, I'll just cut a little hole in the mesh so that I can slide my tow hook in. It will work out perfect. So I'll show you all that when we get this thing cut and installed and set up. So let's get after it. Guys, I am at my MR1 gantry CNC machine. I've got a chunk of aluminum sitting in there ready to be machined. Got the program loaded up here. So we are ready to cut this thing. facing operation came out just fine. Now we get into the scary bit. This is an adaptive cut, so you can see the basic shape starting to show through there in the cutting guide. So this is the scary one. So let's get into doing the 3D adaptive cut. It'll make kind of the back half of this tow hook bracket. First half is almost done. I'm gonna drill the 16 millimeter hole there. Actually, it's a 37/64 drill bit for a 16 by 1.5 tap. So we'll get the tool changed here, but first half is done. Looks great. A little change of plans here. I'm gonna do a boring operation for this 16 millimeter hole instead of the drill. The drill bit was just too long for my machine here. So I've got a long reach, 1/2 inch, 2 flute flat end mill there, and we are going to bore out the hole there and go all the way through. Came out pretty good. You can see the second op where I had to flip the piece to recut it. There is a little line, machine line there, so it wasn't perfect. Same on the back, right there. But other than that, this came out great. I decided not to do a ball nose end just to finish the edges. I'm gonna powder coat this, so I bet the powder coat's gonna fill in a lot of this anyway. But let's get this coated and then we will get it mounted on the car. guys, let me give you a quick update on the transmission plans for this car. Again, the DL800 dual clutch trans, that's part of the drivetrain for the Huracan and the R8. In the last episode, I talked about HTG tuning, and thanks to a lot of you and doing my own more in-depth research, I decided to change directions on that. So I actually canceled my order and I am changing directions to a different solution. And the solution is one, working with a gentleman at CAN TCU. The owner of CAN TCU is going to help me see if we can reverse engineer and get his unit working with the DL800. Now, CAN TCU has great solution for all the BMW configurations, all the different transmissions and so forth. So Kenneth over at CAN TCU is going to help me kind of reverse engineer and get it working, get the CAN TCU unit working for the DL800. He's done some work on a DQ500, so a little bit similar. In fact, the DQ500 TCU is in the mechatronics, so I already have that in there. So Kenneth's got to give me a hand here. I've already got the unit right here, CAN TCU transmission controller. This setup is a little bit different in that it uses the factory transmission control, but it's simply intercepting the CAN bus messages and CAN bus triggers to filter and augment the messages before they go to and from both the engine computers and the OEM transmission controller. So Kenneth over at CAN TCU is right. I mean, the logic in this type of system is much better, given that at the end of the day, these manufacturers spend millions and millions and millions of dollars in R&D fine-tuning their transmission control units. And so I want to reuse that. It has all the built-in safety measures, all that capability in there. So let's just repurpose that. So the architecture of this design, I feel much more comfortable with. We're going to see if we can make this thing go. Again, the CAN TCU will kind of intercept and remove a lot of the nanny controls so we can bypass and not have to worry about all the various subsystems like emergency parking brake system, the ABS controller, the steering wheel column controller. Those are all subsystems that the transmission wants to see. And I don't have any of those on my car. So with the CAN TCU setup, Kenneth is pretty confident we can get this thing going. So I'm pretty excited to get started on getting that wired and plugged into the car so we can begin some of the development work. All right guys, off camera, I installed the CAN TCU controller box, wired it in. Pretty straightforward affair. Let me show you where I mounted that. Move the seat forward a little bit here. So I mounted the CAN TCU box right behind the seat. My wire loom routes just below there, so it was easy to tap the CAN bus wires. Power ground, two different CAN buses to bridge both the TCUs and the ECMs, both OEM, and that sits in the middle and regulates all the communication between the two. So that's where that thing is installed, and pretty straightforward affair. So we're gonna get to tuning that thing. All right, I've got the dash all programmed for the gear setup. So again, temporarily I'm using the Huracan shift control buttons here, but ultimately I'm gonna program the 5-button Motec rotary controller here, park, reverse, drive, so that I don't need this anymore. I'll reverse engineer the signals out of this and we'll get this going. So let me show you what I got as far as programming here on the display. So it's obviously in park here, right paddle, I can put it into first gear. And you'll see the little A signifies automatic mode. If I push the manual button, M here, it will turn green. The gear selector will be green, and then you'll see the little M for manual mode. M again puts it back into auto. I can go into park, and we can also do reverse. So reverse turns red, back to park. And then if I double pull the paddles here, it'll go into neutral. And there's neutral. Right paddle, first gear, and then P back into park. So that's working out really well. I've got the dash all programmed. Again, I figured out the CAN bus stream and the CAN ID and the various variables within the CAN ID for the transmission selector and the transmission selector positions. So that is working perfect. I gotta still reset my my shift points there. It's much lower than I wanted, so I gotta fix that still. So now all we gotta do is get that transmission to run adaptation, and we are off and running with this setup. Guys, monster day today. I'm gonna take the Ultima down to a local shop who has the Audi Lambo factory tuning software called Otis, O-D-I-S. And we're gonna plug that into my car and see if we can do a couple things. Number one, update the software on the TCU, the mechatronic that's inside the trans. Remember, that's new. And I'm getting a invalid software code on it, fault code, which I believe is preventing me from running the adaptation on the trans. CAN TCU is all set. Kenneth did an awesome job. We think we've got all the parameters set. So we're actually gonna try and run adaptation with the Otis software as well while I'm at Mark's shop. So pretty excited, monster day today, and I'm gonna bring you along for the ride. So I'm going to pick up the trailer now, drive back to my house, load the car up on the trailer, and bring it down a couple towns away. It's about a half-hour drive, and see what we can do. So big day, I'm super excited, a little bit anxious as well. There's been a lot building up to this, so I'm gonna take you guys along for the ride, and fingers crossed today is a day we've all been waiting for. So let's do it. Alright, she's all loaded up, ready to go, straps are tight, and this thing is ready for a little road trip. Another one. Going to a different place this time, but should be good. And tow hook worked out great, and as you can saw, the lift, I had to use the front axle lift to get this up on the trailer. That worked out well. So, alright, let's get on the road and see if we can get this thing going. That is crazy looking in the rearview mirror and seeing that. Ultima, right up in your face. Bringing this thing up to operating temperature so we can try to run adaptation with the Otis software, factory software. All right guys, little update on the car. So, because I have CAN TCU installed, it separates the CAN bus network from the ECM, which is on one network, and then the TCMs, both primary TCM1 and TCM2, are on a second CAN bus network, and the CAN TCU bridges the two. That's how we can control the communications between the two. So what I did was I had to run back home real quick. I came back, I just created a little jumper cable to jump between ECM network, TCM network. So now we can plug Otis in so it sees all devices on the network. So hopefully we can run the code update, run the coding on the TCM. Then I can remove the jumper, get CAN TCU back, and then run adaptation. So that's what we're gonna try. A little bit of gymnastics here, but man, we're gonna get this thing going.
346 minutes later.
All right guys, I made it back. Long story short, no go. We did not get the adaptation to run on the trans. Actually made a couple of trips back and forth today to the shop and through a various troubleshooting steps, but we think we understand why. So the Otis software, we plugged it in, we scanned the system, we see all the modules. But if you remember, I put in the mechatronic out of a Huracan, and all the Huracan part numbers begin with 4T, 4 Tango. All the R8 part numbers start with 4S, 4 Sierra. So we think that the Otis software doesn't like the fact that even though it's the same physical hardware, the fact that the part number is different on the mech, that's throwing it for a bit of a loop. So I've got a couple additional contacts we're getting in touch with who know this level of code and hardware integration way deeper than anybody I've met yet, to get an answer on that, if that's in fact the case. It might require I just swap out the mech to, again, a 4S part number unit instead of the 4T. But we'll get an answer to that before I drop more dough on the mech. But in any event, that's where we are. I'm a little bit bummed, but we're on the trail. I'm pretty confident we'll get this. I've got plenty of work to do to finish up this car in the meantime. The front end is mostly done. I just got to work on the rear clam, get all the holes cut for the fender vents, paint the inside of it, do some other trimming and so forth, install the rear lights. So plenty of work to do in the meantime, but I'm hoping to have an answer on next steps on this transmission here in the next day or so. So stay tuned.